A good
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, Eva just recently joined and she's wearing one of my dresses. Because she does not have any. I know.
I am big. Are these all students speak out?
No, they are the journalism class.
I knew that they were in the class doing
Yeah.
something, so I ran into them asking me if I would take my favorite. And I said,
Yeah. I think there might be like a few people who might be speaking out, but I think the majority is class.
Oh, people.
I'm good. How are you? How are you wrapping into the semester going?
Crazy. I'm not lying. Very stressed.
It does get very crazy. There's just like an overall like just staff senator one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Same.
I'm fine. You think about it?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't necessarily know the question.
There's not. I was on the committee to select someone last year. There's not really, I guess, like specific credentials. It's just kind of like a passion for the student body and like a need, like a drive to want to like help the board, like, assist the board in seeing the students like
Yeah,
point of view, I guess. Yeah.
I feel like that. I could achieve that goal. I hope that it was if I were to get selected into the interview side, I know I don't necessarily have that students.
Oh, you don't need to be considered at all. It's a completely public space.
My other thing sounds nice.
Okay.
I do lots of
Yeah. There's the current trustees now. The student trustees are not on the Senate or anything.
Is there any way to contact one of them? Maybe you think just to
Yeah.
hear about the content?
Yeah, they have office hours, which is kind of quiet. So.
All right, call this meeting to order. Happy week 15, everyone. We made it to the last GVM of the semester, so just round of applause. We're all hanging in there on week 15, studying hard. Okay, so we have a very busy agenda tonight. I don't know if I should do it all. Packed, so we're going to get started as soon as we can. So we're going to start off with student speak out. Again, just for clarification, please speak out, please give your name, your year, and then you're able to speak for 3 minutes, and then 2 minutes for questions. Are there any students to speak out?
Hello, my name is Lydia. So, I am a 4 out of 5 years, and I live off campus. I'm just gonna read off my phone. So as some of you may know, there's currently a OUPD investigation regarding a male student here on campus harassing and stalking many female students. Majority of these reports take place on the 7th floor of Alden. Many of my friends and friends of friends have received Snapchat requests from him. He has even requested to follow a friend's mother on Facebook. The male suspect takes pictures of the student and then approaches her and starts harassing her, asking for her contact information. Yesterday, one of my friends was sitting in Starbucks and saw the male suspect in question taking pictures of her. She immediately called OUPD, but since the situation was happening off campus, she was redirected to APD. She told the woman on the phone the situation, thinking that the information would help the case. However, the woman told her to call back, but she had an actual emergency. My friend tried to explain that she was merely trying to help the investigation for the police department. The sensitivity and the importance of these cases, whether the situation is rape or sexual harassment or stalking, should be recognized. I am speaking tonight to express my disappointment that my friend who was trying to help propel a podcast was shot down. I understand that APD could not have done anything in this situation, but we should all be respectful and take these issues seriously, whether on campus or outside. Thank you.
Are there any other students to speak out?
My name is Alex Jackson.
a senior. I'm also a government affairs commissioner, and I am here to speak out in support of Bill 1819, the bill to propose the Athens County Board of Elections relocation. I just want to speak briefly about this. From 2014 to 2018, the last two midterm elections, we saw significant student turnout increases in all of the precincts on campus. And I'm guessing a lot of the off-campus ones as well. So, and that can be attributed to having board elections close to campus on Court Street. Many students who don't have cars, it's real accessible for them. I know students who have been uptown or at Chipotle or Juvenile, and it's real convenient, and they can go vote right there when they're uptown. Not all colleges have that as the case. The board of elections is far away. So for a number of practical reasons, it's really important that we have board of elections where it is. Student turnout's low, but this definitely helps keep it where it's at. So it would be bad if we could get any further away from campus. So I urge you all to vote in favor of the bill so that we can tell our county commissioners not to vote.
Are there any other students? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to announcements. Are there any announcements from the body this evening? Yes, Commissioner Judy.
Friday, from 11 to 4, do you all know where the Bobcat student lounge is? Yeah, okay. So my commission in national affairs, we're doing like tabling on microaggressions. You know what that is? If you do know what it is, help us talk to people about it. We're gonna have candy. We're gonna make free poster boards. Just one Wednesday on glitter. It's been great. We love crafts. So we had a lot of fun. Just talk. That's 11 to 4 Bobcat student lounge.
Is there a flyer for that?
No. Yeah, I'm gonna post it.
Are there any other announcements? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our first presentation for the evening. Okay, so we have Delphine Bautista, the director of the LGBT Center.
Brought you all some swag. Hopefully it makes it. No. I will. Thank you. Many thanks to Maddie and to the leadership team for inviting me to join you all this evening. For folks who don't know me, as was shared, my name is Delphine. I'm the director for the LGBT Center, as well as adjunct faculty in Women's Gender Sexuality Studies, as well as within the social work program. And so we're going to do a very brief overview of what we do as a center. And then Maddie asked if we would discuss a little bit about microaggressions. And rather than having you all listen to me about those dynamics, two of my staff join me who will be sharing their stories and experiences and our version of Speak Out. Speak Out is one of the programs that we offer through the center where folks share their stories and experiences. And so we'll take it from there. At the core of what we do as a center, whether it is inviting a speaker, whether it is presenting in a forum such as this, whether it's through a film screening, organic conversations that happen in the center, at the core of what we do is sharing stories and creating space for people to share those stories both bravely, safely, and with all of the richness that comes with story sharing. And so some of the things that we do as a center is creating a space on campus where we can openly, honestly discuss sexual and gender diversity. And what that looks like is through a variety of different things. Everything from educational events, again, forums like this, our Safe Zone trainings, and the plethora of trainings and workshops that we offer, my teaching in different departments or guest lecturing in different departments, film screenings, guest speakers, so on and so forth. We are a space for advocacy and creating an opportunity for folks to share their voices, especially those who have not had an opportunity to have their voices heard. And so whether it be encouraging Destiny, who's here with me tonight, to write our column in the Post, Queer Near Queer, whether it's meeting with different student groups and giving them our thoughts and insights on what it means to be an activist and an advocate and what that can look like both in the classroom as well as outside of the classroom. We are a space that does challenge folks and does invite folks to think about things in a new and different way. That said, we also make folks uncomfortable, and that is part of what it means to be an LGBT person in terms of embracing queer pedagogy or queer frameworks. It is creating spaces where folks are intentionally made to feel uncomfortable in order to think about something in a new and different way. A lot of what we do, again, is focused around in sharing stories. And with that, also being silly and having fun. So whether it's crafting, coloring Darth Vader and the various shades of the pride flags, to just today, if folks would have walked in the afternoon, you would have found all of us with our feet up, doing different yoga positions in order to relax and drain the fluids from our feet. And so there's a little bit of everything that happens in the LGBT Center and trying to meet people where they are. Lastly, the only other thing I will say about our programming and what we do and what we stand for as a center is we talk a lot about safe space, which is important, but more and more research and rhetoric is changing from safe space to brave space. And what it means to create spaces where folks can have open and honest dialogue and the messiness of those spaces. And so we are starting to shift our language to brave space instead of safe space. And with that, recognizing that sometimes creating dialogue is messy and can be uncomfortable, but that's okay. And it's not about hurting people or intentionally making people feel victimized or minoritized. It's just creating a space where we can openly and honestly discuss tough things and to do so with support and affirmation. And so just shifting, well, any questions about the center before we shift? Where's the center? Where in Baker?
Down the hallway.
Yeah. People usually go, oh, this way. And I'm like, yes, that is us. And so we know that we are your center. And you will not become an LGBT person if you come to the center. You do not have to be LGBT to come to the center. Like the Women's Center, UMSAR, and the Multicultural Center, we are a space that serves all students. And so please come and hang out with us or participate in our programs, connect with us on social media. Shifting the conversation slightly, and I'm mindful that the International Commission will be having a conversation on Friday, is this whole concept of microaggressions. How many of you have heard of the phrase microaggression? Okay, when you hear that word, what comes to mind? What is your understanding, definition, and or example of a microaggression? Uh-huh.
Side comment that comes off maybe at like face value as being a nice thing, but it's really back up with like racist.
Anything else? What are some examples? Oh, sorry.
Also, one thing, like kind of think to what Hannah said about like it comes from sometimes microaggressions come from a place of ignorance, but like in a place where they genuinely don't know. But like when I get a microaggression, I kind of take it as I try to take it as like you just don't know where I'm from, so you're asking those questions. But sometimes it is like kind of like a backhanded comment, and it's like I have like my personal favorite is, wow, you speak really good English. America's not the only country in the world that speaks English. So like, I get that they're trying to compliment me, but also
You don't have it.
oh, that one too.
You don't look Hispanic, Delphine. What am I supposed to look like? We come out with a oh, you speak English very well for a blank. Something that's coming up a lot in the research is, oh, I'm an ally, or I'm not racist, homophobic, biphobic, transphobic, so on and so forth, because my best friend is blank. And we don't want to undermine your friendship or relationship with that person, but no. And so it is a backhanded comment. It can be a physical act, and though a lot of the research does talk about it being unconscious, sometimes I do think it is conscious. Whether it be something we said, something we do, that ultimately dehumanizes another person. And that the reason we talk about these things, go one more slide, is because it's not just what comes out of our mouth, it's also our bodies and what our bodies express. And so if a person rolls their eyes, if a person is on their phone, if their person is on gadgets, if a person has their arms crossed, that sends a message. And can be just as hurtful, and in some ways even more hurtful than the things that come out of our mouth. Lastly, before I turn it over to Carolyn and to Destiny, the reason we have this conversation, though it does make folks a little uncomfortable and uneasy, is because misgendering a person, and so referring to a person by the wrong pronoun, for some folks, they may not see what the big deal is with that. The reality is, misgendering a person can lead to trans people being discriminated against in the workforce, which then leads to trans people being murdered. Is that a drastic chain of events? Yes. Is it a reality though? Yes. And we see this not only with the trans community, a different minoritized group, but the things that we brush off, oh, you just don't have a sense of humor, you just take things too seriously, those small things can ripple, can lead to more aggressive, more violent, more direct violence to not only individuals, but to whole communities. So that is why myself, I know Winsome also in the Multicultural Center talks a lot about microaggressions. Geneva and the Women's Center also is starting to talk about microaggressions. It's an important conversation because these everyday things can lead to bigger, more violent acts. And so, I think that's all I had. I'm going to turn it over to my fabulous staff, Carolyn and Destiny, if you want to introduce yourselves, name pronouns, and then take it from there.
Hi everyone, I'm Destiny Jaram, she, her pronouns. I work at the LGBT Center through my work study, and I'm sure y'all know me because I used to be in Student Senate. And yeah, that's me.
I'm Carolyn Nicole Hunter. I'm a fourth-year BFA in ceramics. I'm the Shades president, which is our QPLC org on campus, as well as Hip Hop Congress. That's pretty obvious. And I am the outreach coordinator for the center. I do a lot of things like implementing programs for queer people of color, queer people in general, trans folk, and offering awareness and education through that program. So of course, I've been here for 4 years, and since I've been on this campus, I feel like I've been facing a lot of microaggressions and like understanding like coming from like a very like urban setting to a very rural white university. A lot of things are like a culture shock to not only the students around me, but for myself. So like I want to say like opening weekend, my first like night out on the town. Me and my friend walked across campus and we walked past Palmer Place, and like the first thing that someone said to us, like, "Come to our party, we need more dark skins." As you can see, I'm not very dark, so hearing that and like seeing that, like also like my friend was very dark skinned, but she was not. That is not a very welcoming like thing to say. It's like even in good nature, if you want somebody of color to come to your party, you never want to mention their skin tone. And so a lot of the microaggressions that I face come from like those black compliments because I'm a light-skinned black person. A lot of those things that are said to me are compliments that belittle and demonize darker complected folks. So one of the things that I get a lot is about my hair and like how my hair is like more smooth or silky or like curly and like better hair and like thinking about good hair. Good hair is a very like abusive and like a very like top tier microaggression because not only has hair been a very huge discrimination against Black professionals, it also means that you undermine the physical qualities of a darker complected person. So a lot of things that I get in terms of my personhood and stuff is like you speak really good for someone who's Black. You don't look Black, and the whole "what are you" is a very huge microaggression that I get almost weekly. You should never ask like a mixed person what they are because that not only makes them uncomfortable, but it makes them feel like they have to like often like present only about their race and like talk about their race. So just be mindful of like how you talk about people and like how you bring up these conversations is very very important in terms of like validating a Black individual and understanding them beyond their skin color and their physical appearance. In terms of my queerness, thing that comes up a lot with queerness and LGBT people in general is preference and the thing about preference. So looking at sexuality as a choice, you know, thinking of since I'm bisexual, do you prefer men or women or like some sort of like binary like statement like that is a microaggression because it not only undermines non-binary people and trans people, but it makes the conversation about my sexuality and like exposing those private like sort of things and like personal things about myself. You would never ask like your friend those things. So just being mindful of like preference and like understanding that sexuality isn't a choice and like gender is not a choice for a lot of people and all people, all queer people. So just being cognizant of like thinking about people and the things that they identify as is not as like a topic that you should bring up as like casual conversation and like often hound on. I'm just thinking about one of the things that I get here a lot and that I hear a lot like in academia and being on like a student on campus is the idea of merit and scholarship for marginalized students. So like thinking about saying that Black students or queer students get all these scholarships, but I don't because I work hard and stuff, undermines the effort that we put in. I put in so much effort into my scholarship here that I was enrolling into the school during my prom night. Like it's not like undermining the ethic and the work ethic of Black people and queer people and people who are from urban areas and don't have that sort of resources is very problematic. And think of those language terms as I put in more effort than you have. It's a very dismissive and dehumanizing, understanding Black students as more of like a symbol or like affirmative action. Bringing up affirmative action is like as some sort of like insult to your scholarship is very problematic because not only do it ignores the context of the scholarship of marginalized students, you also put a power imbalance of the work that you do versus the work that we do as students of color and queer students. So.
Cool. So in contrast, I'm going to talk about a few things. So sometimes microaggressivisms are not what you say or what you do. It's the exact opposite. It's not giving people of color or queer people space or asking for their input and their work and consideration into things. You're not asking them what they think of things. You're not asking them if they can add anything to what you're working on, that is a microaggressism because you're just not considering my opinion compared to a room full of white people or men or straight people. That's a microaggressism because you're saying that I don't have content that's valuable. You don't want it. I've had an experience where I just felt like I wasn't being respected, I wasn't being listened to because no one was asking me what I thought. No one was asking me if I had anything to contribute. So that's something I think is think about what you're asking and think about who you're asking it to. One great thing I think I like to use is like if something feels uncomfortable, I have an interaction with someone and it leaves me feeling like weird or wrong, I think like, would they have done that to a man, or would they have done that to a white person, or would they have done that to a straight person? And usually the answer is no. So that's a question you can ask yourself. Would I have done that to a man? One microaggression I think a lot of people face is like when I go to the dining halls, like men, I guess I'm assuming their gender, men though always stand really, really, really close to me and it's really uncomfortable. That's a microaggressism because we all know that a man wouldn't stand that close to another man. Like, don't do that because if you're not going to do it to everyone, then it's wrong. I also think tone policing is another thing that is not really what you're saying directly at someone, but how you're saying it and what you're saying. Like, so if I'm getting upset about something and I start getting loud or I'm talking really fast and passionately about something, I've had professors say that I sound angry. That's a microaggressism because I'm a well-spoken, well-educated person and I know what I'm saying and I'm able to create interesting conversations and my side of things. And when I give that to someone, my input on something, and it's eloquent, well-spoken, and someone just says, you sound angry, it's like, no, I don't sound angry, I sound passionate. Think about the words you're using to describe someone. Is that actually what that word means? Because I think a lot of time, any people of color start talking or enjoying themselves hanging out with their friends, they're deemed aggressive or angry. And are they actually being like that, or are you just uncomfortable with that person who looks this way in your space, taking up space physically, taking up space verbally? So those are what I think some microaggressisms are. And I think a great way to like keep yourself in check, because it can seem like it's not always like yes, no. It's sometimes more discretionary. Is this wrong or not? We all have critical thinking skills. We're all in college. So use them. Would you have said that to someone else? Would you have used those words on someone else? Would me doing something had bothered you if I looked differently? And it's small things like that, like standing very close to me in line, just ignoring my physical space and my boundaries, or not asking me for input on things we're working on in groups or things we're working on as collaborative effort, or saying things that undermine the struggle of my marginalized groups. Like, there's a reason that people of color are talked about so much. There's a reason that queer people and all these people are placed under an umbrella of marginalization or underrepresented groups. It's because they have been systematically murdered and silenced and oppressed throughout history. So think about that next time you want to say something, because a lot of times you see people in spaces, they make you uncomfortable. Whether or not you notice that, it's because these people haven't been in positions like this or spaces like this before. That's for a reason. So I just think your words, your actions, what you don't say, who you say it to, and what you do, it really does impact people. So start thinking about your place in society, your place on campus, your place in a classroom. Think about, am I taking up a lot of space? Could I give some space to other people? Am I acting strangely around certain groups of people? Because those are all microaggressisms, and it all stems down to people being uncomfortable seeing marginalized communities out in public and in powerful positions and institutions that have normally been dominated by white men, because frankly, that's the only people who have been in power for most of the world's history. So yeah, that's my speech. Questions?
How much time do we have?
About 5 more. Questions?
What questions do people have? Either for Carolyn, Destiny, or for myself.
So what's a good way to check other people who you're using microphones? I think you should just call them out. So what I've been doing is saying, like, would they have done this to someone else? Because especially microaggressions are casual and they're small. It feels wrong to the person who notices it, but even when it feels wrong, you don't even know all the time why it feels wrong. So I think saying to them, would you have done that to a different person? And if you know that it's just outwardly wrong and offensive, it's not as nuanced, then you can just say, like, why would you say that? You just need to, I think it's important to call people out, because if they don't, they think it's okay and they think it's acceptable, or they don't even know why it's wrong in the first place.
Sometimes, and so there's snarkiness, like, really? When did you know you were straight? And like, when did you come out as a heterosexual? Can be fun. But what I've started to tinker with is, that's fascinating. Tell me more about that. Why are you asking? Well, you should never ask why, because that's a cute story. For what reason are you asking me that question? And sort of flip it back on the person and see how it goes. There's a really interesting BuzzFeed video, and I know BuzzFeed's problematic, but in connection with Decoded on MTV, and it's what if microaggressions were flipped towards white people. And though it's comedic, it is sort of an interesting sort of awareness raiser, but just sort of flipping it back, like, why are you asking me this?
I'm an RA, so I'm not and we have a lot of things that are geared toward making more inclusive spaces, educating, things like that. I'm just wondering if you all think that we could use something better or more, or like if there's something you'd like to see collaboration with or something like that.
I would like to see people of color in powers of position. That would be a great first step towards making this a safer, more inclusive space for people of color, because we talk a lot about diversity at OU, but it should be called visibility, because it holds people accountable. And at the end of the day, I'm not seeing a lot of visibility. So I think, and obviously you're only an RA, but I think a great solution to that would be getting more people of color in positions like that as RAs or BSO leaders or anything that is a powerful position, and they can help other people, but also be looked up to as a role model, because you don't see a lot of that. I mean, you just don't.
I would sort of implement like inclusive language. So like starting out, like when your residents like move in, like introduce your pronouns and like ask them for their pronouns. Thinking about like sort of programs that you can implement, but also bringing in people if you feel like you're not comfortable enough to like implement those programs because you don't identify as that like marginalized like identity. Bringing in people from other resources like to do that stuff for the people of color or for people. So just thinking about like practicing inclusivity, and then just being mindful of relations between residents and like emphasizing diversity training and just being cognizant of like things that they face.
The only thing I would add to that is a mutual showing up. It's great that the LGBTQA Commission comes to the center. Why aren't other commissioners coming to the center? Why am I not going to events and encouraging my staff and students who are connected to the center to go to other events? And so it's mutual. It's not just what they have to come to us. And so making sure that we're showing up, and your residents will see that, like, oh, I went to XYZ event and my RA was there. Cool. They may not come up to you and say that, but it does send like, oh, my RA is trying. Oh, Maddie is trying. And so just showing up and being as visible as we can. Not that we're trying to make it about ourselves, but just being present. Like, am I going to events hosted by International Student Union? Am I going to events hosted by BSCPB? not for people to be like, oh, look how cool Dolphin is. I think I am cool better. But it is just being visible and have a mutual showing up. I remember the first time we did a tailgate, which I didn't know what a tailgate was at homecoming. Folks came up to us and very visibly were not comfortable with the LGBT center being there. But my response was, it's important for athletics and the fans to know that we are also sports fans. Again, I don't know what tailgate is. Didn't learn until that year. I've never been to a football game. But we were there and we were present. And it wasn't about attracting attention to ourselves, but just showing that we're also part of this community. We're going to show up for each other. Any final questions before we go? No?
Question is not on the
Fine.
center itself. So Dr. Shakubin came in on Halloween actually, and she was talking about possibly LGBT center moving. She talked about like where you want to move to, like the process of that, like kind of like somehow like help advocate for where you want to move.
Let's move the boxes. Lots of stuff to move. So yes, the center is located down the hall and was placed there for a variety of different reasons. For safety reasons, confidentiality reasons, folks could be going to the Dean of Students office, to the Veterans Center, to the Office of Accessibility. And so that made sense 12 years ago. And so a conversation I've now been going on my 6th year, conversation I had with David Scudner, with Dr. Clark, with Dave Pina, and now with Dr. Shakubin is we've outgrown our space. And for folks who haven't been to the center, it's tight in the center. And so now we're in the process of hiring an assistant director, an administrative associate. I don't know where I'm going to put them, honestly, because there's no space. And so one of the conversations I actually had with Dr. Pina was potentially moving closer to where UMSAR is. And as a way of, one, collaborating, we collaborate a lot with WGSS, African American Studies, with UMSAR, and so just being able to have that connection with our sibling office. It would be a dynamic changer. We wouldn't be in Baker Center, we would be on Court Street, but as an office that also serves the community, in some ways we are more accessible to the community, not just to the campus. And we're next to Chipotle. And so that's a possibility. The dream was Cruising House, which is the house right outside of Baker Center on the 4th floor, where then Institutional Equity, now ACRC, used to be. And the house has been empty for at least 5 years. And so it'd be really cool to have a house to ourselves. The place where I'm wrestling with is being in a more public space and a larger space, ultimately, is exciting, but we're also more public. And we are one of the few offices in Baker that does get vandalized, that things have been written on our door, things have been written on our window. And so part of me was like, it'd be cool to be more visible, but with being more visible, we're more visible. And so how do we keep people safe? How do we keep people's privacy? Because there are a lot of folks who I know don't come to the center because they're scared. It's intimidating to come through the rainbow doors. People they're not out yet. I met with a med student a few years ago who she walked up and down the hallway for half an hour before she could even touch the doorknob. And so how do we protect that level of privacy? And so Dr. Shakubin hasn't told me. She said the conversation has moved forward, but we haven't, a location hasn't been mentioned to me. One of the other places was Lindley. I said no to Lindley because Lindley is a hot mess to get around. And if people have a hard time finding us now, to explain Lindley to them,
It is so.
no. It's a cool building, but no. And so we shall see. Baker is a cool space to be in. We'd be close to, as we are now, close to the Women's Center, close to Senate, close to the Multicultural Center, to campus involvement and some of our natural collaborators, but we just outgrown the space. And so we shall see. It is our 20th anniversary, and so it'd be really cool to be in a new space on our 20th anniversary. But it's been a conversation. This is not to be shady towards the university, just because there are a lot of pieces that have to move. But we've been having this space conversation now for 6 years. But it's just complicated because the university wants to affirm us and make sure that we're getting the support that we need. But then making sure that other offices are also getting that support. And it's a lot of Tetris of sort of moving things around. And so we shall see. We shall see. But potentially 31 Southport, Crucible, or somewhere in Baker. Any final? I'll go to the last slide. No?
Thank you so much for coming on this family. I just have a question on how you guys track your influence or interactions with students. I'm sure you can count the number of people that walk through your door, and if that is probably the most we see in the time about
We provided that in the report that Senate was a part of last year. We do keep track of how many people come in through the door. We don't write down people's names intentionally so that we don't out people who aren't out yet. But on average, we have between 50 and 60 people who come into the center on any given day. And whether that's to meet with me, meet with the staff, more and more students are wanting to meet with other students. And so the staff has become available to meet with folks. And so it could be those types of interactions, whether it's the post coming to interview somebody, folks coming in to study, take a nap, eat, come for a program. And so roughly 50 to 60 people on any given day, some days more, some days less. At events, it does vary. Last night at the screening of Pro-Black Voices at the Athena, we had at least 75 people. And so we've also had events where there are 400 people. And so how we track the impact is something that I'm hoping that with the expansion of our full-time staff, we can better document. But again, we do track how many people come into the center, how many safe zones we do, and how many speak outs we do. And with tracking how many safe zones we do, we roughly estimate how many people were in the audience. So if I were to do a safe zone for Senate, I'd roughly count, okay, there were 100 people there, or there were 50 people there, there were 3 people there. We can do last time. Nope, next one. This is where we are. Again, Baker, we're also on social medias. We do try to tag Student Senate, and if you want to tag us, please do, and we will repost, retweet things. We also do and Jenny Hall Jones and other folks. And so please connect with us. Please visit us. Please interact with us. Know that we are your center. We're not just here for a specific group of students. We are here for all students, not only on this campus, but also our regional campuses. We do serve as a resource to our regional campuses, as well as the 24 counties that make up Southeast Ohio. Know that we're your center, and we'd be happy to help in whatever way help is needed. And many thanks to Maddie and to all of you for your time and attention. Many thanks to Carolyn and to Destiny for joining me. Thank you all.
Swing by them on the same floor as us, so. Okay, we are going to briefly do our presentation.
It's included in the
So I'm just gonna start.
Yeah.
So on Saturday, we traveled to Dayton-ish, actually, where's it? Beaver Creek,
A little
Ohio,
confused.
near Dayton, to visit state. They were hosting OSGA, which is the Ohio Student Government Association conference that happens usually once a year. It brings together all of the Ohio four-year public universities. Not everyone was able to attend this one, but I think 9 were attending, so that was pretty good turnout. And they just basically meet to discuss and collaborate on different issues, common issues that our universities are facing and figuring out ways that we can collaborate to make the most impact. So here's a picture of us there to prove that we were there.
All right, well, so we started off by voting on some positions. So we have a new executive director of OSGA, which they lead the association, and then the director of legislative affairs, which actually seems like a really cool position to have. So if anyone is like wanting to get into that, maybe think about going to the OSGA conference next year. So they advocate for all the students that go to four-year public institutions in Ohio, and then actually meet with a lot of legislators in Columbus and advocate for students' rights, things that students are looking for. So that was cool.
Which is roughly 500,000.
Yes. So that was pretty cool to hear what Kevin Jones, who is the new person, what he was looking to do.
Okay, so I'm a member of the President's Council, which I'm sure you can put it together, but it's all the presidents, the student body presidents of all of the different university student governments. So we met just to discuss some common issues that our student governments were facing, and then potential areas for collaboration in the coming months. We really wanted to do something like a long-term type of collaborative effort. So issues that we discussed included student trustee voting rights. That's been a conversation for a very long time. Something that we all as universities agreed that it would be great to have a voice. Currently, OSU is the only university that has voting student trustees. We also discussed campus recreational facilities because Wright State is considering bringing a rec facility to their campus. We wanted to hear about ours. We obviously discussed the state budget. It's a budget year, obviously, since the governor just got line. And so just a conversation about continuing to put higher education funding at the forefront of every conversation we're having with legislatures. And then also collaborative lobbying efforts next semester in Columbus. So that's been something that we've been talking with John, our Commissioner Slaughter, about heavily. And you will be hearing more information about that next semester, but we will be at least one night traveling up to Columbus to lobby the legislature on a lot of issues, but especially the budget. And so wait for that. But we're hoping to actually go up multiple times if possible. And so then also we determined that we're going to have a monthly call between all of the presidents to discuss some of these issues further and set times for us to collaborate in the future.
So I was on the legislative committee. We talked about freedom of association bills, which I had actually never heard of before Saturday. So basically it's about specifically sorority and fraternities and single-sex organizations wanting to have like rights, different things like that. There wasn't a whole lot of information, so we ended up tabling it to talk about it more. But it was, if you look it up, you have a lot of information. It's a pretty interesting thing that I had never heard of before. Again, we talked about student trustee voting rights. As an OSGA, we did vote to endorse that and to push our legislators to consider those at all the other universities, that's not OSU. And then we also talked about House Bill 758, which is free speech on college campuses, which comes up every year. The only difference between this one and the one that was discussed last spring is that one took away the general fee that funds all of the orgs on campus, the student senate, and all of the other ones that SAC funds. But this one doesn't have that part in there anymore. So we discussed how that changed our position on like the free speech on college campuses.
And then I went to two smaller committees. The first was academic. Well, actually, the first was student affairs. And so we talked about how like student government at each university interacts and connects with the student body as a whole. So I talked about our SAC system and how we help out student orgs. And Wright State kind of has a similar thing, and so does Cleveland State. A couple other schools have like similar, but nowhere near the budget that these three schools have. a lot of schools fund the bike share for the university. OSU is a part of the contract for Lime, so like they were a part of the decision making for getting Lime at OSU. And Cincinnati and Wright State are all like a part of the contract where they give a little bit of money to fund the bike shares there. And then like Akron does, if you get a parking ticket on campus, you can do an appeal process. And like, so we just kind of talked about those different ways that we interact with students on like a daily basis. And then academic affairs, we mostly talked about a couple universities are trying to put in a mid-semester evaluation form for your professors, just so that like if the class as a whole thinks that the teaching style should be a little bit different, or like you can evaluate and say, wish if there were more group projects or something, then the professor still has time to like fix that before the end of the semester evaluation, where they would have the opportunity to redo the class. So a couple universities were doing that. So we talked about the pros and cons of how that was going.
Okay, that is everything. Moved it right along there. So we now are going to take a group photo so that we have one for this year. So I don't know if we should come up. Okay, so we're gonna have everyone, I'm sorry, this side. You're all gonna have to get up and come to this side.
That's my first group photo. I'm so excited.
People come down to the front and taller people go back there. You'd be like,
I'm sorry, you're very tall.
Come on.
Here we go.
It's not gonna be. I'm sitting up there. here right now. Just like, it's a great name.
Tell us to all be, all right, everyone, we're gonna be quiet and smile.
This side over here, you guys switching a little bit.
Pretend you love each other.
Yeah, if you guys can try to find some more. So not getting that.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna need a sign. Turn the camera over.
I hate landscape photos.
No, we need
Do it, do it.
Do it. Take a whole bunch.
Thank you.
Yes, story.
I dress ugly. Listen,
Present.
Senator Kashus. Senator Grant. Senator Newmark. Senator Shaver. Senator Swift. Present. Senator Archibald. Senator Moore. Senator Kraus.
Present.
Commissioner Jones. Senator Gibson. Senator Alliott. Senator Martin. Commissioner Shyrod. Commissioner Swaffer.
Present.
Commissioner Feedy. Commissioner Ramlock. Commissioner Ness. Senator Sweeney.
Present.
Senator Newman. Commissioner Zimmerman.
Present.
Senator Reader. Senator DeVos. Senator Van Fleet.
Present.
Commissioner Smith. Senator Chapel. Senator Schmidt. Senator Levon. Senator Karistic.
Present.
Senator Raw.
Spiro. Present.
Commissioner Arnold.
Present.
Commissioner Graffis. Senator Carmen. Senator Conlon Speedy. Senator Finn. Commissioner Holtman. Senator Baker. Senator Shelton. Senator Rideout. Senator Fuller. Senator Deering. Mr. Thomas. Senator Peterson. Senator Kramer. Senator Addison. Senator Miller. Commissioner Weston. Senator McAdams. Senator Cole. Clerk Woodward. Okay. Going to move on to additions to the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda?
I motion to add Senate Bill 18, 19, 07, 08, 09, and 10, as well as Resolution 18, 1962, and 63 to the agenda.
All those in favor of adding all of those to the agenda, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? All right, so added. Okay, all those in favor of approving the previous meeting minutes from 11:28 on, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? All right. So we don't have any old business, so we are going to move on to new business tonight. So again, I want to emphasize we have a lot of legislation tonight, which is wonderful. We're really excited about that. We apologize for all of the additions to the agenda. There were a lot of last minute things that came up that we really wanted to get here before the month-long break. So we kind of time sensitive sort of things. So we appreciate your patience with those. Okay, so we're going to move on to Senate Resolution 18-1959, a resolution to appoint a senator to the staff commission. Whereas, second, primary sponsor, Commissioner Weston. So secondary sponsor, Vice President
So, Richard, is Richard here tonight? Okay, Richard's not here tonight, but Richard was actually an intern and took it upon himself to, he decided he wanted to become a senator. So, Richard, Zach, and Letstone and Morgan interviewed him. So I'm really excited for him to elevate his position and become a I just want to say that Richard, for his first staff meeting, sat 4 hours consistently funding, and he's a rock star. He helped me out a lot, so I really think that's about the time to hang out.
Is there any other discussion on this resolution?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of Senate Resolution 1899, please raise your hand. All those opposed, abstentions, resolution passes. Congratulations. Okay, we're going to move on to our first bill of the night, Senate Bill 1819-06, a bill in response to the fourth National Climate Assessment. Whereas, primary sponsor, Commissioner Shira.
Yeah, so basically a couple weeks ago, the government released the fourth National Climate Assessment, and it basically concluded that the Earth is warming mainly due to anthropogenic causes. However, despite the report from acknowledges, like not really, he doesn't believe it. So I think it's really important that we urge the university to continue to take this report seriously and focus on the goals of the sustainability plan and climate action plan, so that we work towards a more sustainable future, especially since climate change will impact students at the university and especially people in the Appalachian.
Great, thank you. Secondary sponsor,
Yeah, so I echo everything that Commissioner Flatrock has said. I believe it's a very important issue. And also going off with Allison just said, lots of our campus will be highly affected by these actions and what's happening to our planet right now, especially in Appalachia. So I really want to bring it to the attention of the university, especially at sustainability. As we all know, they have recently cut, so basically show them support for office sustainability and everything is supporting everything they're doing.
is there any discussion on this bill? Yes.
My only question is there a possibility for us to add a demand to the university to revise its 2075 carbon neutral policy? Just because it seems like it's a little too far ahead in the future for it to make any real impact, and maybe we have to reconsider it.
So, how amendments to sustainability work as that number of years ask that, I feel like we should be able to go over it, like this should be a priority, but that's definitely a good plan and around on the years, but basically it's about an amendment process that would happen every 5 or so years.
And for the remainder of my time, just to say I'm strongly support this bill. I just remember something that my teacher said that was when she was growing up in Kenya. They could tell like there were all the naysayers and she did believe that, but at the same time, like, I understood what she was saying. But most people, when they say the climate is changing, it's because they don't know how to work to do it. Those other places. And we have cities that towns like in the Arctic are falling into the ocean. Literally, islands are disappearing, and people are saying that's not changing. And we really need to wake up and realize that this world, we do not stop change.
Is there any other discussion on this bill?
As Senator who represents constituents that all get the benefits of clean air, the environment, and not being blasted in the sun, because of their extremely important
sponsor. Point of this bill is just to get support of their findings and that we meet their findings. Just sort of move towards the president of the United States students.
It's more to just kind of encourage the university to take their work seriously. Any other discussion? Yes.
I'm in support of this, and I do think this is us being global citizens. Because I know sometimes it seems like we're focused on ourselves, focused on what's happening on campus. But I think sometimes we forget the choices we make here at OU does affect the rest of the world. And that this is one of those issues that really is interconnected. That climate change is not just going to affect one country, and it's just one business. It's going to affect us all. If we all can do something meaningful change, demand meaningful change, solve, that not only puts our lives become better, Appalachia will be greatly affected by climate change. And a bunch of minority groups such as LGBTQ, Black folk, disabled folk, homeless folk, disproportionately affected by it. But if we can all come together and demand something, that is us, especially this thing that is so interconnected, that is us being global.
Any other final comments on? All those in favor of Senate Bill 18-1906, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? Voted 2 abstentions. Bill passes. Okay. Moving on to Senate Resolution 18-1960, a resolution to appoint a University Life Commission, whereas the primary sponsor of the commission. Lillian has done a ton of work thus far. She is currently our vice commissioner, but she's recently had to do work. She's really good at that. And she's done a lot of great work this semester, and Charlotte is becoming a senator, and I'm super excited for her to have children. Is there any discussion on this resolution? All those in favor of Senate Resolution 18-1960, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? Senate Resolution 18-1961, a resolution to update chapters 3.5 and 6.09 of the rules of procedure, whereas primary sponsor of the first board. Yeah, so we met with Sophia, met with Mr. Sponsor, to discuss how we can update those procedures for the chapter reflect the Secondary sponsor Chief Justice.
Yes, we've had a sponsor, and pretty much what this is doing is updating both the chapter, the section on government affairs commission, section on the regular alumni relations to encourage them to collaborate with one another on the Washington DC networking trip that is now going to be an annual thing, hopefully, and for the director of alumni relations to work with the student senate advocacy, student alumni. The Senate Alumni Advocacy Forum at the State House. Sounds very hard to say. But that is what it is doing, is she's solidifying those two things in
After speaking to the commissioners in charge, we think that these amendments will be positive additions. I reserve the balance of my time.
Is there any discussion on this resolution? Okay, all those in favor of Senate Resolution 18, 1961, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? Resolution passes. Okay, Senate Resolution 18, 1962, a resolution to purchase office supplies, whereas. Second, primary sponsor chairperson.
Okay, so yeah, last, so, upon reviewing the budget application, reports, and the criteria outlined for approval.
Secondary sponsor, Senator Dorn.
Same as what Chris said, and all that, that's very good. So, Chris, and, that's pretty sure, Chris.
Thank you, Senator. Does anyone want to explain?
We just used some more crosswise for the office, and as we've been, we needed a lot, so we ran out very quickly. And then we also, we threw out the cards job, as we did the members, we did the cards job.
Any other discussion on this resolution? All those in favor of Senate Resolution 18, 1962, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? Senate Resolution 18, 1963, a resolution to rent a projector, whereas primary sponsor chairperson.
Yeah, once again, that's middle criteria. On reviewing the budget application, the committee reports the middle criteria outlined for approval. Yield the remainder of the time to the senator.
Hi, so this is for the holiday movie showing on Thursday, that's tomorrow, 7. The social activity. So Hannah Braver could be here today, but she is so in the Slack, you scroll up, it's December 3rd, she put in voting for the different holiday movies. So if you want to go and just press the react on your favorite movie, Grinch is currently winning and stuff. So so tomorrow, but the voting will go until tomorrow at 4, and then Hannah will send out a message about what we want after hour. It's tomorrow at 7 in the Senate office, and we're going to see about having some snacks as well. So take a break from studying, you guys can come by and chill out a little bit. I forget about secondary sponsor, Senator Dorn.
Upon review, met all the criteria. As Chair Richard said. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Yes.
Hi. For those of you who don't know, I am also the Vice President of Student Services for Residence Action Council. And I met with the former Senator Braver earlier today, actually, to give her this here projector. So, by your approving of this budget resolution, you are supporting partner student organizations on campus. So I strongly encourage you to do it. And it's a very nice projector I just bought. So it's fancy and you should enjoy it.
I would also like to attest to this projector. Walter and I worked in middle last year and we used it all the time. It's a great projector, so worth the $5.
Yes, very much.
All those in favor of Senate Resolution 18, 1963, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? Resolution passes. Senate Bill 18,
Yeah, so this is a bill that's really incredibly time sensitive. So basically, they're trying to move board elections industry, which is off of SNPs Ave, so very kind of way. Just by kind of what Alex said earlier, we feel that this move will decrease student turnout in elections. It's definitely a less visible location. Definitely would be able to see something like that walking down Court Street all the time. That's an important thing. And I just feel like without the visibility of the board of elections on Court Street, not as many students are going to vote. I know somebody who decided to early vote just because they were walking past it, got Jimmy Johnson, said, I'm going to vote today for this right. Without that accessibility for students, I don't think they're going to vote given the numbers they vote.
Secondary sponsored vice president.
Okay, so before Commissioner Schlosser just explained where Campbell Street is, can anyone raise their hand if they don't know where that is, or if they currently don't know where the Hatfield building is? Okay. So I think that says a lot, because especially as members of Student Senate, I would venture to guess that we are one of the more engaged, like we know where things are, and so that's really disappointing to hear that the county commissioners are thinking about moving to a place that a lot of the students, I would venture to guess most students don't know where it is. I also want to say, think about how often everyone in this room passes the board of elections office now. Whether that is I walk past it almost every day, just coming to campus, either when I'm going to Baker or going to classes, or if I'm coffee, going to any of the businesses on Court Street, you pass by the board of elections. And I think that is a lot of merit to just walking past it almost every day. And I do think that we will lose student voters because of that. I also think that student senate should have a vested interest in getting as many students out to vote as possible. Because we are already 18 to 24-year-olds, already I think the lowest voting block. And it's really important to make your voice heard. So I think that we should strongly oppose this.
And I'm the other secondary sponsor. I just want to echo everything that already said, but also just remind people that this body has done an enormous amount of work this year, specifically on voter registration. Really, really proud of the work we've done. And I just think we should continue to be a body that continues to promote that type of civic engagement. I think that this is a really great thing. I reserve about my time. Is there any discussion on this? Yes.
I know that the board of elections had a movement 2 days ago. I was able to attend. Did they say why?
I know some more commissioners say you could also do some percent there for voter registration, whereas in another area for their offices. I definitely think that their offices there, having a full-time staff member there helps you register vote, kind of but like having your equipment is the vote cheaper at another site.
I don't know as much those who went to the forum or have this prior to it, but in terms of accessibility, students have the free bus rides at transit with their county buses to run there, whereas community members, like people that just live in Athens,
have any. If you have fire guests, I understand.
Yeah, so I just have a question, on responsible research that might be when staff, even the staff members for registration, were they also doing
So it's still in the planning stage for this, so I don't have necessarily all the answers. They like on the EAU's website, they have like all the components of it, like plans and other plans. But I definitely don't answer.
Because if they're able to take full-time staff members, it would it be like possible for this to be like an additional space that we were able to go to these two locations?
Right.
Besides just registering, also the active voting, that we're able to expand, it's now very good.
Right now, the current plan is so until that plan is.
A couple things before I start speaking. I'm not really sure how to look. So, if you have any questions for John? I know this isn't our job, but the machines are outdated and it is crowded. It's not moving cameras. What would be done to rectify that? Would be space smart enough? I mean, I guess you would know that's the board of election and county commission. Say this is a problem, what's the solution to this problem besides moving? Because I know this election, I'm talking, it's a question, I don't know if you answer my question. But, a lot of problems, especially in the state of Florida, but bad election, but that's obviously probably a 1.5 year in Athens County.
So, our different voting machines that we have in precinct, voting machines at Portland, so we don't vote early. Because right now, if you vote early, public, okay. Yeah. I'm not sure for, I think it's a separate conversation where voting equipment. Something I can definitely support.
I would also feel like finding other locations for their equipment, but election day only comes once a year, just about. I think that if we could find county could find a place to put equipment that they pull out every once in a while, that would make more sense than. Well, I think that the main issue I have at least is that where students are voting, and their students are able to register to vote, be in a central location, and their students are able to vote. I think that those are three things that are really important. To me, it's not as important where the equipment would go, but obviously finding a solution is part of it.
Well, I mean, this is pretty much a vote to oppose it. What if it wasn't opposed, then it's just not gonna, I guess that's not. I don't know. If you propose a solution to this stuff, I don't know. This is a problem, just saying. wish I was in a forum, but I really think that this at least allows us to open a dialogue for elections to maybe send the government affairs commission to have negotiations with them. A lot of my friends didn't get the chance to really vote the day before or even the day of because of last time interfering with the one-time elections and all of these other factors that play into work schedules and all that, especially since election day is not a national holiday. I also think for elections, in our talks with them after we pass this bill, hopefully, is maybe to not have more machines, but just renovate the machines we have, or just transition to strictly paper ballots. That's just how I look at it, especially in terms of making it more cost effective as well as trying to make it a little bit more accessible for other people. There's also mail-in ballots. Maybe we could also implement electronic online voting. I know some cities and some countries also do that. Also do those options. However, I think that this bill alone is just for us to open the dialogue and then working on the cases up to the negotiations.
It's a sort of question. But I'm wondering, so I heard other unions, you mentioned that one of the reasons would be accessibility, like for people who don't know the opposite accessibility, maybe fund. I'm wondering if you know how many community residents, how many vote for elections, just how many students do, because I mean, I know I have friends that will not go to class if they can't find a parking space sometimes. Parking on Court Street or anywhere near board elections is almost impossible. I get that it's very clear for students to see it as they walk by. But if it was in an ATCO building, even I don't like that location. It's like in a way behind some other weird industrial buildings, houses. You can't see it from the road, but it is right off the exit from the highway. It's accountable elections, right? So it's for everyone. And it may actually increase voter turnout for early voting. It was moved there rather than being potentially not. I don't know if there's something like numbers on for early voting. I don't have numbers on that, but I know that the ATCO building has to have parking so you come to it. Whereas Uptown, like Uptown area, of course, has had a comprehensive parking. Definitely check it out. Because we do that parking garage constantly. So Uptown is accessible. Whereas Main Street might not be a parking space.
I was just directing something. There are also mainly entire streetscape of Simpson and that entire corridor to get into ATCO as it is right now. So the parking and the way that you get there will be completely different after 2020 and it's also shut off the almost the entire year of 2020. So just
The ATCO building will become more visible. You said they're redoing these things to make it easier.
they're just changing the streetscape so like you'll be able to drive down and they're on parking on the street and share path by your sidewalk. So like you're not cutting down trees so to speak. It's gonna be a different way on the street.
Does have merit. We have to think about the community as a whole, not just the students. And I think one idea could be that we could have candidates. We could have the journalists who have the manners for the new students. Or we could have an entirely different discussion of solutions.
other people at the county, and the board of elections. I would say that hearing, a bill from the student government should have some weight. I believe it does. I would like to think it would have some weight, in terms of the.
Second half of my question. So I'm from West Virginia, I'm not originally from Ohio, and I was surprised we actually had plasma election day from West Virginia. I know that was too, they actually cancel all plasma election. So maybe that's an issue that like the rest of the university, like maybe on election day, just get like classes. Like you said, it's not like every, you know, it's every other year. Every so often, so like suggestion, I don't know where to go from there.
They really don't even know how much it's going to cost this yet, so they're in the early stages of it. But I got the information about in one way or another, just because, again, or if they move, I feel like student body might be able to build as accessible. Just as a student walking on college street, and starting out like as a college student, they will come. They're going. So I feel pretty passionate.
And I feel like we could definitely give them more, I think they want to hear something more worthwhile. And then also to positive feel like this, I'm like, if for a month, because we all have worried, like they can keep having words for it, like in high school. This is really I'm just worried about the solution being decided while we are gone. And so I would suggest voting on this and virtually voting on this secondary sponsor. But then coming back with the legislation week one, and you all have a whole month off. Coming up, we could electronically talk about solutions that we have come up with and things we can do. And also we are all available during email, and I'm assuming that John sent it to all these people. He can include his contact information, and I would be happy to have mine.
I will be at this most of the next
I just want to interrupt the conversation. I know you're all really excited and passionate about this, but we're just not focused on positive solutions. I think more of those should we just want to express our concerns as students about a new location. I know we have ADA compliance concerns and everything, but it's showing that we are concerned about this before they'll relocate. There'll be a need to go turnout. I think this is the kind of main content of this bill. And like Nancy said, it should be a good first step for me to come back next semester and frankly use another bill for the new solutions.
If the building is not compliant with the American Disabilities Act, then we are supporting them having an illegal home location. And so this bill somehow to reflect the need to have a current building in compliance with the law of the legal location.
Do you have a proposed, I know this is very on the spot, a proposed line that you want to say? I would be in support of adding that.
What makes the building non-faculty for step right there. If, I'm not
This is a general question. What, if we know it, is Athens' code of law in terms of renovating rented space? Because technically they are renting space, if I'm not mistaken, for the current Board of Elections location. So what's the actual legal process for them to put in a request to renovate? Like, honestly, it's not that expensive to make specific accommodations at first, and then over time, implementing more permanent accommodations. Is there any process for that?
I'm not sure, but that opens up another conversation about renovation of that space versus renovation of that. Just at face value, I believe that we will get to increase around totally hard times. I kind of don't think they would. I won't but we expect them to make this decision within the next 3 or 4 weeks, probably. But I think John, as you said, will already be here over break, probably expressing your concern regardless. I would move to the table the bill until you come back. Motion to table the bill. What's the specifics of that?
Okay, well, the motion is on the board right now, so we need to vote on that motion to table. So we need a second.
Second, and all.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling, which would mean that we would come back to this conversation at our next meeting, which would be in January.
Is there discussion on the motion?
Yes.
I guess I kind of have a question for the bill sponsors. I would be willing to vote yes on this bill. If we come back to last semester, there was another bill. We'll be proposing student dialogue with the board of elections, with the county officials. And obviously, nothing's become yet, so there's nothing really. I would be more okay if that was something. What are your guys' opinions on that? I guess it's the wrong sponsors of this bill.
Those in favor of tabling bill 18-1907, please raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Okay. Okay. So, the table, yes, we're going to continue discussion, but I would like to recommend that we move forward because we have other bills and legislation to discuss as well. So, yes.
Okay, I motion to friendly amendment, bill question, to read, whereas students recognize that the current location is not compliant with the American Disabilities Act. Resolved, the Ohio University Student Senate opposes the Board of Elections move, but encourages the current location of the Board of Elections to become compliant. Would you want that after line 24?
Okay, so we're going to vote on just that friendly amendment. Does anyone need to hear that again, or are we okay?
Whereas students recognize that the current location is not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Resolved, the Ohio University Student Senate opposes the Board of Elections move, but encourages the current location of the Board of Elections to become compliant.
So all those in favor of that particular friendly amendment, we're not voting on the entire bill, we're just voting on that friendly All those in favor of Bill 1819-07, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. All right, passes. Okay, I am the primary sponsor on these next two bills, so we're going to designate Vice President as president.
Okay. Bill 1819-08, a bill to set the precedent of an annual presentation to the Board of Trustees. Whereas, primary sponsor.
Okay, so this has been a conversation that we've been having with Dr. Colton, Dr. Nina, and various different stakeholders since the beginning of this semester. And something that we hope that you all have read this bill. We sent it out last week and follow up with after meeting with the Secretary of the Board of Trustees and Dr. Colton. So basically, this would set the precedent that we're expecting, starting with us and all future Senate administrations to present or bring an annual presentation to the Board of Trustees, just basically updating them on all of the projects and things that we're working on. So this is an important collaborative step forward, bringing them up to date on work that we're doing and emphasizing that shared governance model that we're really trying to support here. So the best way for the Board of Trustees to kind of know what's going on with students and concerns is for us to be able to bring those forward. So this is basically just saying that this is setting the expectation for future Senate, but also letting the Board of Trustees know that we're committing to as Senate.
Okay, secondary sponsor is myself. So I would just like to say I echo everything that Sloan said, and I think that we want the time that the very precious time that we could have in front of the board to be about students and advocating for students, not the little changes that we decide to make to our Constitution, which only happens every several years. We would want our Constitution to be something that is good for several years before we make changes. So we really want to be going there to advocate for students, not making those changes. So this bill and asking the Board of Trustees for this, I think is the best move for students. I reserve the balance of my time. Treasurer Redmond. True. Sorry. Secondary sponsor, Chief Justice.
These ladies are wonderful. This spectacular bill. I formatted it from a Google Doc to a Word doc. It was interesting to do that. But anyways, the purpose of the Student Senate is to be a representative body of the students on campus. And I think that it would behoove you all and your future people in your position to pass this, because if you're not representing the student body to the Board of Trustees, what's being done there? Like, the Board of Trustees makes all of the official decisions of the university. That is their function. And yes, the student trustees take student input to them, but I believe that it would be beneficial to have the Senate present them as the voice of specifically the students at this university, and that is what this bill formalizes. So I encourage you all to approve it. I reserve the balance of my time.
Any discussion on this bill?
I just want to tell that I think this is a great idea. Directly getting our input to the Board of Trustees is really important. And as Walter indicated, I believe in their rules or description, student trustees are supposed to represent the fiduciary responsibility to be basically the interest of the university rather than explicitly the interest of the students. We should be trying to give more direct input to them. But I also had a question of, is this something that we can incorporate or should incorporate into the rules and procedures
I will directly respond to that. So yes, there will be a resolution changing actually specifically the presidential duties. That'll be coming. We didn't want to add more legislation to this meeting specifically. But yes, that will be something that is added and we'll be working with the judicial panel to update the presidential responsibilities to reflect the business expectations.
I also just wanted to add that the executive, specifically the president, who will be presenting, is elected by the student body. So they are the voice of the student body, whereas the student trustee was not elected by the student body. They were picked by us as the final candidates and then picked by the governor's staff. So their voice is very different than the voice of the president also. So that also being
All those in favor of Bill 1819-08? Opposed? Abstention, or no, sorry, abstentions? Okay, bill passes. Okay, moving on. Bill 1819-09, a bill in support of an autonomous constitutional process for a student senate. Whereas article primary sponsor.
Okay, so along with the bill that we just passed, saying that we would annually present to the board of trustees. Again, hopefully you read this bill, but specifically it says that currently in our rules and procedures, the final decision makers of our constitutional changes is the board of trustees. So first it's voted on by our body if we were to make a constitutional change. Then it goes to the student body, our constituents, and then it goes to the board of trustees. Actually, we tried to pass some changes, some constitutional changes. Actually, the previous administration tried to pass some constitutional changes last semester. And the board of trustees expressed some concerns over the fact that they are not really actively engaged with students on a regular basis since they are making those high-level decisions. And so they were concerned about actually having the final say in our constitutional changes, and they ended up rejecting some of our constitutional changes on a variety of reasons, but mostly because of that particular reason. So when this was changed, I do want to emphasize we are the only governing body of students in the state of Ohio that requires our board of trustees to approve our constitutional changes. Everyone else has their constituents be the final vote of approval, which makes their approval process a little bit more autonomous and independent. And so this is something we want to make sure that kind of before this, constitutional changes were being used as a way for administrations to get in front of the board of trustees, and we don't want our constitution being changed just because we want that face time with the board. So that was kind of the premise of why we passed that previous bill, so that we can have that face time and really engage with them and talk about the actual issues and concerns of students instead of having that face time through constitutional changes. But then also this would make our constituents have the final say in our constitution. So again, I urge you to vote yes. This is a really important step forward. I think it still maintains that wonderful governance through that previous bill, but it also gives us the autonomous and independence as governing body to give our constituents the final say. So,
Secondary sponsor, Vice President Burke. I do just want to say we are still chartered by the board, and I don't really think that we are still very legitimate, and we'll have a lot of. I think that this makes us a more legitimate body because of the fact that we are going to be able to annually meet with the board instead of every so often meeting with the board. I reserve the balance of my time.
And I just want to say that if you look in the bill, line 15,
Regional Affairs Commission isn't even on our constitution yet because the process is so long. So all these little tweaks that we can't change, and the vote that the board of trustees have blanket. So for efficiency's sake,
I also ditto. It was Sloan and Burke, who's at the mouth of the head. Chief Justice.
Okay, another fabulous bill. I promise the Board of Trustees, because they make all these big important decisions for the university, has much better things to do with their time than approve edits to our Constitution. That should be something that is left up to the student body as a whole, in my opinion, and in the opinion of all the rest of the sponsors of this bill. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Never say that.
Any discussion?
Walter, can you outline what the process is to amend the Constitution for those who don't know?
Okay, so right now, according to the rules and procedures, in order to make any amendment to the Constitution, whether this be completely changing it or adding a comma somewhere where there's supposed to be one, the changes have to be approved by the Senate body. They are then posed to the student body in an election that is overseen by the judicial panel and by the Chief Justice as the chairman of the Board of Elections in that capacity. And then after that, it comes back to the Senate, and the Senate votes on it again with the knowledge of the student body's wishes concerning it. And then it goes to the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees vote on it. And if the Board of Trustees and all of the other votes go through and pass, then our Constitution is updated to reflect the changes that we voted on.
So my main question is, are we going to do this special election, polls and everything again, or are we going to do this just tag them on at the end of the year when we do our elections?
As this is going to the Board of Trustees in their January meeting, like assuming it passes us tonight, I don't vote. Assuming all of you pass this tonight, it will go to the January meeting of the Board of Trustees, where they will vote on it. And then any changes that are made, ideally for time's sake and to not bother the student body more times than is necessary with elections, it would be tied on with, assuming it's not a dire change that needs to be made, would be tied on with candidate elections on April 2nd.
I just want to say, as someone who's been here for a long time, I've seen the process. When I first joined the center, when we were trying to do constitutional changes, it took many months to update our constitution, and the fact that we are the only body in Ohio that has this is, I find ridiculous.
Okay. All those in favor of Bill 1809, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the bill passes.
Doing my duties as president. Thank you. Bill 18-1910, a bill condemning Ohio's proposed House Bill 608 and 119. Whereas, primary sponsored Vice President Burke.
Yeah, so actually last night, the Graduate Student Senate passed this bill condoning the two House bills. So sorry.
Very different.
Lots of words being spoken. Condemning these two House bills. And we were really happy that Maria, the president of GSS, asked us to also put a bill up in our body to condemn these House bills. And I think it's a really great thing of shared governance that we are working together and advocating for students together. So I reserve the balance.
Okay, me, I'm just going to do everything that she said and just remind you that you represent constituents that are low-income students. Secondary spot, I reserve the balance of my time. Ditto, close the river. Is there any discussion on this? Yes.
I just want to give a little update. This afternoon I called Eric Chard about the universal lobbies about this. Both of these bills. House Bill 119 has already passed the House and gone to the Senate, whereas House Bill 608 is still in the House. These are both time sensitive. Eric said he didn't know if they were going to pass in lame duck or if they weren't. So with the one already passing in the House during lame duck, I definitely think we should get on stances now before we really bounce on that.
Is there any other discussion on this bill? Assistant Credit.
I'm gonna keep this as short as possible. Both of these House bills directly affect students on campus, and it would just kind of be counterintuitive since we are serving students of all different backgrounds, economic, whatever, that if we vote this down and don't condemn the House's bills, that is just kind of like why are we serving the student population in general, because this case actually affects our students.
Any other discussion on this bill? All those in favor of Senate Bill 181910, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? Voted 1, 2 abstentions. Okay.
I know this is the last one, so a lot of you might not have things to say. I would say for time reasons, unless you really have something pertinent, we can put it in the Slack. But I don't want to stop someone from speaking. So if you have something to say, please, you are obviously very important.
Any commissioners with updates?
One thing I want to update everyone on is I've been Senator Champion member Barb Harrison, who is Secretary's Assistant Director for Community Engagement. She handles some off-campus related affairs and such. We met with her last week to discuss the proposed project around the landlord database or housing database of sorts. And the university is currently considering, her office is considering partnering with this group called rentcollegepads.com. We, the commission, are pretty opposed to that partnership. And the only way we would possibly be supportive of it is if the contract was only for 1 or 2 years rather than 5, which is what the company wants at this point, I guess. I just want to keep everyone updated on that. She also indicated that basically all our plans for the ideal database, what that would look like, has already been tried before at the university. Her office tried to create a housing database modeled off of what OSU's looks like, which is actually what our commission looked at theirs, and it looks fantastic. Kind of timely, they partnered with the fire department of Columbus to do a lot of fire inspections and rate housing based on safety, which I think would be something fantastic that we could do here. And clearly the fire department is in need of more support, as Chief Ryan said last week. Graduate Student Senate endorsed the proposed, it's still in the planning phase, the proposed collaboration with this company. But I mean, the company says right on the website that part of their goal is to help landlords increase their prices and rent things out quicker. And it just adds another middleman entity that I think will just cause more problems and increase the prices for students. I just wanted to share that. So we're going to kind of take stock of our options over break and look at what we can do moving forward. But it sounded like the database based on what OSU did would not be all that expensive to institute, and I think we should look seriously into doing something. Just want to update everyone on that.
That's good. Sunday we'll be having our last event for the semester. Live in with off campus, Commissioner Smith, with Kicking It Courtyard. So if you or your constituents live in Courtyard at 6:30, probably like 7:30. I have B-dubs, fill out the cafeteria, ticket. All right, we're gonna have my friend. Got the DJ there, have some Jenga, have some board games and stuff, so it should be pretty cool. Wanna come by, what's up there? I'm done with mine.
End of your report. Commissioner Freeman.
like I said earlier, we have tabling on Wednesday or on Friday. Bobcat Student Lounge, we're making really passive aggressive posters tomorrow. I want glitter. So I'm gonna write like, why do you speak such a English? Glitter. So come if you want to make posters. It's fun. But yeah, if you want to come help out, if you're free from 11 to 4 and just want to hang out with us, come. There's candy, I have a lot of it. I'll probably have to. Other than that, if you still want to be part of the photo series, let us know. USC meeting coming up. Food pantry's going great. MEA's going great. Yeah, I can think of anything else for today.
So for those who weren't aware, there was a Rupert Float cupcake in catering that had a straw in it, and so they just put the straw in it and then threw it away, so it was a complete waste. So yesterday we met with Culinary Services, and I'm pleased to announce the straw has been defeated. They are removing it immediately, and that's the end of my report.
I just want to add a constituent came to us specifically and asked for us to advocate together with you. I let the constituent know today. And he was very, very, very pleased.
Any other commission reports tonight? Okay. Moving on to Senate committee reports. Yeah.
So the can drive is on Friday. We've had like a black horse of the government affairs committee came out of nowhere with 80 cans. So our current total is 245, which is crazy because on Monday we had 115. So that is crazy. Currently government is leading, then women's with 35, and then Reslife execs and staff are all basically, so Reslife has 29, execs have 27, and staff has 26. So it's really tight. And then we also have New Life with 22, so they're in there too. So everyone keep bringing your cans until Friday because now there's some real time to go.
Awesome.
Yes, that is the end of my.
Thank you.
Also, okay, so I'll make this really quick. One, for my committee, Sustainability Committee, we are interviewing hub leaders next week. So I'm sitting in one of those hub leaders interviews, really exciting stuff. Second, I also sit on the Architectural Design Advisory Council, take a look at cool buildings all day that we possibly build. We have passed the new HCOM building, so that's cool, so that's up to debate, money and stuff. And also, we talked about 29 Park Place, which is the old president's house, and talk about how best to make it more ADA accessible. So that's it.
Great. Any other Senate committee reports? Those are standing. So, any standing committee reports? Go ahead. Yeah, you can go on to the next slide. Any university reports?
So Jordan and I and Rachel were all on the MEA, medical emergency assistant immunity when you created all et cetera. We had our second meeting with them. We presented like all the changes that we made and all the proposed changes that we wanted. They were super receptive. And they're gonna start working on completely redrafting like all the online resources in break, right? Little break. So we're gonna be involved with that, and then we're gonna have another meeting, probably like set up all that art, like marketing initiatives and stuff. So hopefully more students know that they can call for help when they're That's it.
I just have a question. Has anyone else's like university standing committees met or contacted them? Because I feel like pretty. There's like 12 or 13.
I have to.
You know.
Madeline has, yeah. Reach out to me.
I guess I just want to like I'm super in the dark and you're halfway over.
There are some standing committees that don't begin until January. We're actually, it's a conversation we're having as Senate chairs right now that have more communication as well. So more to come on that. Any other, yes.
For the public comment review, it is the red line of the code to make so when we come back
finals, but if anyone's able to stop me, I just encourage you to do that. Any other
So, another update on the food pantry committee, there's additionally a survey outside of the food pantry for students who utilize those resources, as well as a winter break food drive that will be collecting Saturday from different rice halls. So if you have residents or an RA, encourage them to donate or use swipes for the meal swipes program or for donating to the pantry. Yeah, you can donate meal swipes, and you can also like use meal swipes to purchase things to donate for the pantry.
Any other standing committee reports? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to our reports. We're going to make ours super short and send most of our updates. We want to let you know we have to very quickly go into executive session based on something that is required by us in the rules and procedures that we have to do at the very last meeting. It's very quick. Chief Justice Milhoff will do that, but I just want to thank you all for a really wonderful, productive semester. I know that there was a lot that we got through together this semester. I just want to say how proud I am of the work that has been done and for all of your passion and dedication to representing students. I did also want to say Happy Hanukkah to those who are celebrating right now. I also wanted to say Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, any of the holidays that you are celebrating coming up. This is our last meeting before then, so I hope that you enjoy a really wonderful holiday season with whatever you celebrate, and we're really looking forward to getting back to work whenever we come back in January. But enjoy some rest time, good luck on finals, all that jazz, and that's it for my work.
Okay, sorry. So, the student trustee application opened up on Monday. Senate tweeted it out. So please share the application with people, groups, orgs that you believe would be interested in that. Thanks for sticking with us tonight. I know it was a lot, 12 pieces of legislation. It was an awesome meeting, though. I'm really proud of all the work that we did tonight. And I hope everyone has a great break. Give yourself some time to relax, do things you love, but also if your commissioners ask you to do a couple things, make sure you do that. Also, tomorrow, a couple of commissioners are going on a safety walk with a lot of administrators. So look out for that. I think we'll be learning a lot and helping the administrators learn a lot about what it's like to live on campus and be walking around at nighttime. So I think that we'll be able to get a lot from that. That's it.
Okay, so Zach met for 4.5 hours on Sunday, and we gave out $46,317.37. So that's very exciting. It was very stressful. Saw Justin Kelly yell. It was a scary time. So that's all I really have. What? Yes. And so other than that, have a great winter break. Enjoy yourself. Go do winter things with your family. Hang out. I don't know. I'm really proud of everyone this semester. Y'all did a great job. Okay. $22,589.07 in Senate total. Allocated, not spent, $10,433.78. Not allocated or spent, $12,155.39. Back total, $136,574.06. Spot, $69,117.51. New fund, $67,456.55. These numbers are true and accurate to the best of my knowledge.
I just want to say that as students are coming in and out of the office this week and next week, I really want to keep the space like professional and clean. Everyone's really respectful of each other because we have a lot of people coming in and out for Blue Books. And also, that space is your space as well as student space, so feel free to study in there. And if someone is studying, please be respectful of them studying. I also want to remind everyone that we have a vote for the apparel design in Slack. If everyone can vote for that, that would be really awesome. I'm going to get the ball rolling on that over winter break. And good news, the points reset at the end of the semester, so you'll start with 0 points in a month. That's it. Great. Thank you.
The panel has continued to meet with various commissioners. We met with Commissioner Keeney last week,
I have here. Yeah. Eighth grade picture. I wish everyone well in the remainder of the semester, their projects and finals, and have a safe break. And come back refreshed and new.
Dr. Jones is taking some well-needed rest.
So first and foremost, thank you all for the impacts you all made this semester, but also just working with me and the execs and each other so well. You continue to reaffirm that I'm going into a field of work that I'm going to truly enjoy and prosper with. So thank you for that. I'd like to encourage you all, like Jason said, focus on your finals, focus on those final projects, and truly taking care of yourself. You only have a few more days left this semester. Seniors, you have one semester left after this. Let that soak in. Enjoy the rest of it, but get out there, bring in good grades, and enjoy your break. Go Bobcats.
Okay, we have to move to executive. It's gonna be super fast. We're gonna run out of the room, but
You actually said. I move to enter executive session in compliance with chapter 4.13 rules of procedures.
all those in favor of moving into executive session, please raise your hand. All those opposed, abstentions. We are in executive session.
All people who are not in student senate must leave the room right now. We're gonna leave.
No, you are good. You